Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Hashtag Leadership What's on Your Mind. Remember, we're a podcast to make you stop and think about your leadership journey by inviting amazing guests with amazing stories and experts in their field. So if you haven't already, make sure you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel or follow us on the your podcast provider. So today we have a very special guest. Jamie, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself in a second, but there's lots of links to where Jamie is from. I used to work there is one of them, and it's only around the corner from where I now live. And I was lucky enough to be in the audience at one of Jamie's talks, and I thought, what a perfect guest for the podcast. So as I hit the 20-minute timer, Jamie, if you introduce yourself and tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll get on with it.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. I'm JAMIE CHRISTON. I'm the Chief Executive Officer now. I was the Chief Operating Officer at Chester Zoo, obviously in Chester. For those who don't know, Chester Zoo, it's 128 acres of parkland. We're the largest zoo in the UK. We have about 517 species of animals, about 19,000 of them here at Chester Zoo at the moment. We normally welcome about 2,000 to 20,000 visitors a day, really depending on the time of year, and about 2 million visitors a year pre-COVID. I've been working with the organisation for about 8 years as Chief Operating Officer and recently became Chief Exec.
Amazing. So as you can obviously tell, there's probably loads of things we can talk about with your time there through leadership, but we'll dig into it. So we'll start at the very start. Obviously, we're hashtag leadership. What's on your mind? What comes to your mind when you hear the word leadership?
I think when I hear the word leadership, I think about my 962 staff I've got here at Chester. Over the last 18 months, it's been particularly difficult for those guys here, especially because I've had to more or less segregate them into two groups. The vast majority of our team were furloughed, and some of them are actually off work for just over 12 months. We actually closed for 208 days during COVID pandemic. And then the smaller proportion, about 220, were still here 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, 24 hours in some cases, looking after those 517 species of animals, those 20,000 animals that we have here at Chester. So it's been particularly challenging for me as the leader to be able to make sure and look after the welfare of those people that work for me, because they're vitally important to the success of this organisation. And to keep that stiff upper lip, to be able to maintain the motivation, to maintain positivity in a really difficult period of time when we didn't know whether we could survive as an organisation. We're a charity, we're a conservation education charity here at Chester, and the government in May of last year basically said that zoos had to close and close indefinitely. And it was that word indefinitely that really struck fear amongst everyone that works here, and all our advocates, all our members and our visitors here at Chester Zoo. In as much as, because we're a charity, we rely on income coming from those people that come through the gates and spend here. And without anyone coming through the gates, there's no income. And it costs Chester about £1.6 million every month to operate, even when we're closed. Our salary bill is particularly high. And thank goodness for the furlough scheme. We wouldn't have been able to survive last year. But I really had to think about how I could go the extra mile in delivering leadership and keeping people motivated through probably the darkest time of the 90 years that this zoo has been here.
Yeah, amazing. And we're going to obviously come back round to have a discussion about that as well, I think. So staying with you personally, whether it was a light bulb moment at the time or whether it was on reflection, quite a few people go back quite a long way here, but when do you think your leadership journey started?
Wow. I think probably 10, 15 years ago, I had an opportunity which I think really set me on this leadership journey. I was working at the time for Manchester Airport Group, and working at Manchester Airport within their commercial team. And I got to know at the time a guy called John Spooner, who was the managing director of Manchester Airport, and really impressed with his leadership skills. He'd come up from absolutely nothing. In fact, he started on the reception desk at East Midlands Airport when he was 16, and became managing director of Manchester Airport in his mid-40s. And I was he was sort of like my hero at the time. And I remember him leaving Manchester Airport, and I was so disappointed that he left the organisation. But a year later, he pitched up at within another organisation, within a company called Balfour Beatty, and asked me to go for an interview as managing director of a small airport in the southwest of England, in Exeter, in Devon. And in fact, she flew me down in his plane picked me up from Manchester Airport and took me down to Exeter. And that's really when things massively started to change for me, because I'd gone from being part of a team to a team leader, and I was like thrown in the deep end quite quickly. He was acting managing director down there, but he became chairman, and really quickly I suddenly had an airport to run, and passengers coming in, and staff to look after, and stakeholders, and all the things that goes with that. But the airport had just been bought from Devon County Council, and was going through a lot of change, or needed to go through a lot of change, and I had to become that change manager and manage the process over a period of time. And that sort of like suddenly put me on this next step into leadership. And since then, all the roles I've had have been in leadership, or leading a team, leading a large team, and managing change, in trying to coach and develop the teams that I've been working for and leading, understanding the difference between leadership and management and all those sorts of skills, understanding the importance of my personality and being on stage every single day, and understanding how my behaviours affect others. So yeah, that was probably the biggest change for me. And I don't think I've actually ever told him that. Looking back, what he actually did to me in terms of changing my whole set of life skills and my own ways of thinking. But he definitely, I think, put me in the position I am today.
Yeah, amazing. I feel like there's an email or a message going to be coming out in the next couple of days to share that. I'll just send him a link to this. So amazing. So I think I might come back to that in regards to, actually, no, I'm going to ask you now, actually, because we usually finish on sort of key elements of leadership to sort of, obviously our audience are wanting to level up their leadership, their situational and self-awareness. How you just said that then, it leads me to ask you, like, what are some of the things that stand out that you've seen in your journey that have been the fundamentals of what have worked in your leadership journey?
I think the most important thing is that everyone looks at you, and everyone sort of like resonates off the behaviour that you provide to them. So I very quickly learned that if you come into work and you've had a bad morning or something's going on at home, and you share those frustrations and that grumpiness and that sort of behaviour to others who are within your team, and that sort of like has that ripple effect throughout your team and affects the productivity and the morale of your own particular team. So you do have to be on. You do feel like you're on a stage, that you come out. I get out the car in the morning, and I have to change sometimes personality, and not that I've got lots of different person, but I know that people are watching me, people are looking at me. I walk around the zoo. I've got 900 odd staff. In today I've got 10, 11,000 visitors. I'm wearing, normally got a name badge on that says who I am, and people look at me and want to. Whatever I do, resonates throughout the organisation. Whatever I say, I've got to make sure things say things exactly the right way. I've got to look and feel and be interested in everyone. I've got to be able to engage eye contact with everyone that I speak, all those sorts of things as a leader. You've got to always be thinking what people, what your behaviour does to other people within the organisation, and that's been probably the biggest thing that I've learned and had to change. And some of that's come through maturity. And as I've grown older, I recognise that that's a really vital part of the job. But that's probably the biggest thing that I've had to come across.
Well, that's the whole sort of situation and self-awareness piece, isn't it? That you have an impact on others. There's lots of studies out there showing the high percentage of the your behaviours and characteristics of a leader rub off on the organisation. So, there's lots of things we can dig into on that. So I want to talk about two specifically things that have happened at the zoo. Obviously, the talk, I was lucky enough to be in the audience, and that day was unbelievable to just hear. And I love to share stories. I think the impact is massive. We can all relate to certain things. Obviously, is the fire in 2018. Can you tell us a little bit about that for the people who don't know about it, who aren't as close as we are? For example, I'm sure a lot of people remember because it was national news. But then how you experienced it as a leader.
So December 2018, Saturday morning, quite a wet and wild winter's day. I got a phone call from our duty manager. We always have a manager responsible for the zoo who's here all the time. And I had this phone call from him to say that there was smoke and fire coming from the rooftop of one of the buildings here at Chester Zoo. And it happened to be the biggest and the newest building that we had, a building which is called Monsoon Forest. It has a bubble ETFE roof, a bit like the Eden Project. And within there, we have hundreds of animals, some very large animals, some large crocodiles, Sulawesi macaque monkeys, orangutans, gibbons, down to some very small insects. We have about 200 free-flying birds in that building. It was sort of like the jewel in the crown of the development that we opened in 2015. So first of all, I thought it was a joke. I didn't actually believe the manager in question. And I only live a couple of miles away from the zoo, and happened to be upstairs in one of the bedrooms and actually could see smoke from the general direction of the zoo when I was on the phone to him. So very quickly got to the zoo, and we're having a background in the airport industry. Airports regularly have what's called local standbys or full emergencies with aircraft that are coming in and out of the airport that have technical faults on them, and there's like a particular procedure which involves the outside services coming in, and that can happen in an airport 2, 3, 4 times a week. But touch wood, it's normally just a precaution for an aircraft movement. So to have something like that here at the zoo, or something similar, was quite unusual. And we do practice on a regular basis all sorts of eventualities, from animal escape to terrorism to fire, but probably nothing on that proportion. And we've never really had an incident of that magnitude. So I came to the zoo. It was just natural, good instinct, obviously, to get to the zoo as quickly as I possibly could. Was the first of our what we call our emergency response team to get here, and the zoo was open at the time, and a decision had been made to evacuate the zoo. I couldn't see really what was going on. The emergency room is it's fully kitted out with all the equipment that we need, but because of the severity of the fire, the CCTV system within that building had already been destroyed by the time I got here. And the first thing I noticed was that the amount of my team that were here very, very quickly, and how everyone's training really acted out very, very quickly as well. We have a control room here, which allows us to be able to manage, I call it a gold incident, at any particular time. So within that room, we have all the technology that we need to be able to communicate both within the zoo and externally, all the equipment that we need to be able to manage press and media attention, anything that we need to be able to contact the outside services and stakeholders. And all that worked really well. I think me as a leader, I was Chief Operating Officer at the time, so the CEO was the number one person, but he was actually in Madagascar at the time on an expedition.
Right.
And so I was actually at some point during the day talking to him in Madagascar, talking to what was going on, people here within the room, talking to people across the fire. So we set up the control room here. There was a satellite control room, which was actually Cheshire Fire and Rescue's control room. And at one point during the fire, we had over 100 firefighters here, as well as 15 pumps tackling the fire. We also lost containment of some of our Category 1 animals. So Sumatran orangutans called a class as Category 1 animal because there's a threat of them injuring a person or possibly killing a person.
Yeah.
So we had our firearms team alongside the fire service, alongside the police firearms team to try and maintain that those animals. And it was a very severe fire in as much as it was blowing about 40 to 50 miles an hour in terms of wind speeds. The bubble roof disintegrated very quickly, so the intensity of the fire was vertical, lots of smoke, and we were trying to save animals as well as obviously our first priority was saving lives, which we did in terms of humans, and making sure it was a safe environment. So because we're a zoo, because people are really interested in what we do as an organisation, as you said earlier, Stuart, we had the huge amounts of media attention very, very quickly, and it really shows on that day, in some respects, the negative side of social media, in as much as, within 2 minutes of the fire taking hold, the first tweet was out there, and very quickly we had news journalists here down at the zoo. We had helicopters flying above. We had some news reporters trying to get onto site, and our PR team did a fantastic job in managing that during the day. We also had a large event going on that night. So we have a second gate Christmas event called Lanterns, and we're expecting 5,000 people.
Yes, I forgot about that. Yeah, I think I'd been the previous year. You see, that was,
okay.
Yeah. So I knew the extent of the disruption. Yeah. That's why.
So within, say, 4 hours of the fire taking hold, we had the first of those 5,000 people supposed to be coming to the event. So not only was it managing the actual fire and the media attention and the staff involvement, but it was also business continuity of deciding whether we should hold that event, and if not, what we should do with those people. So we had sort of like two teams within the zoo who were trying to manage all that, and that's all happened really successfully. So so that was the actual dealing of the fire. Then it sort of like ran into the next day, as much as we had a large media scrum here and set some media interviews. It's the first time I've done media interviews before, but never with a whole bank of cameras in front of you.
Talk about being on stage again.
Yeah, it was very much. And then doing live pieces down the line to Sky and lots of other media companies. Feeling very tired from the day before, and it's all like rolled into the next week as well. So it was pretty traumatic for the guys here. Lots of our staff actually saved the lives of lots of the animals here through their fantastic skills that they have in and the relationship they have with those animals, especially our mammals and our primate group. Yeah. There was also those staff who'd actually dealt with the fire in terms of evacuating visitors from that part of the zoo, and because of the intensity of the fire, there was sort of ash and all sorts of things that was flying around the zoo at that particular time. We didn't let any of our staff leave because we wanted to make sure everyone was safe and make sure everyone was looked after. So there's quite a lot of post-traumatic stress from the staff that were involved that day. concern about
how was that for you? Because obviously there's two extremes of what it could have been, and you can fit in the middle. But there's obviously panic, and then there's people talk about that sort of flow, calm, everything. All the, like you said, the training starts to kick in.
Yeah.
Obviously, you've said very well about the people and the team around you, which is amazing. How did you feel? Did you go through waves of different emotions? How was it for you?
Yeah, I don't think I ever panicked. I think butterflies. I think as I drove here, not knowing exactly how serious it was, not knowing whether any members of the public or members of our own team were trapped or injured or worse, had been killed in the fire. Concerned about our animals. Concerned. I think probably the biggest thing for me was suddenly I am the leader. The book starts with me. I'm the one that's making the decisions. But when I got into the control room here and knew I had the right people around me, knew I had the technology available to me to be able to make decisions, it then became a very controlled environment that we've been trained in for me to make those strategic decisions, for the silver manager to make the tactical decisions, and for those people on the ground to make the more operational decisions. And it flowed really well. A lot of my job was around communicating with stakeholders, making some big decisions about what we're going to do as an organisation, sign off press releases. So I managed it through periods of leaving the room just to go outside and get some fresh air, and then come back into the room and then start again. Sort of like blocking out things that weren't massively of importance and only concentrating on those things that were. We have a scribe in that room, so every decision that is made is time logged and put on a whiteboard, so I could see back exactly what decisions have been made, what have been done, because it's very difficult to take in information and hold it in your brain when all those sorts of things are going on. And that gave me the confidence and the ability to know that things were happening, things were being done, who was where, and then constant communication. And I think also respect to the team as well, that I was the one making the decisions, and as soon as I make the decision, whether they agree with it or not, they execute it and they do it.
Amazing.
So it was quite an intense an intense day. Actually, at the end of the day, funny enough, I was supposed to be going to Manchester that night to go out and see some of my mates, and as I was driving here, I was gutted, thinking, I'm not able to go. And that was sort of like part of the stuff that was going through my head. But actually, at the end of the day, I could either have gone home and sat and moped about it and started double thinking everything that had happened during the day, and probably starting to criticize myself on some of the decisions I'd made. But I actually ended up going and meeting my mates, having a very welcome pint.
After and relax, breathe.
And relax and breathe.
Excellent. So listen, that is our 20 minutes. I've let you go over a little bit because again, it's just so great to hear that whole story of things going right, and how you processed it. And that I love that, taking a bit of time out, because like that breathe, that slow down is really important. So thank you so much for coming on and sharing that story with us.
No problem.
Again, I really enjoyed it at the time, and thank you for coming and sharing it with the audience. So guys, if you enjoyed that, make sure you hit the YouTube channel, make sure you subscribe. We've got some amazing guests coming your way as well for the rest of the year, a diverse amount of people, and make sure you follow us on the podcast provider. And please, if you can, pass it forwards. It's great to hear the audience's takeaways from each of these episodes. And that's the whole idea, to add value in your thought and change your perspective and add value to your leadership journey. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.
And see you all next week, guys. Bye.